Hello there. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Right now, as you settle in, something remarkable is happening across the world. Millions of creatures are on the move. Birds are crossing entire continents. Whales are gliding through vast oceans. Butterflies are drifting on winds that carry them thousands of miles from where they were born. Every journey, every wing beat, every step taken across endless landscapes carries within it a story written by instinct and passed down through countless generations. Migration is not simply movement. It is one of the oldest and most mysterious patterns in all of nature. It is a quiet rhythm that connects the seasons, the continents, and the creatures that follow invisible pathways across the earth. Tonight, we journey into the peaceful world of migration. We will explore over 100 soothing facts about these epic travels, from the Arctic tern that flies pole to pole, to the monarch butterfly that navigates by the sun, from the wildebeest that thunder across the savannah, to the salmon that return to the exact stream where they were born. There is no test at the end, no rush, no urgency. Just the gentle unfolding of nature's greatest journeys to carry you softly towards sleep. So let your breathing slow, let your thoughts grow quiet, and allow yourself to drift into the peaceful wonder of creatures on the move. Welcome to Drowsy Discovery. I am glad you found your way here tonight. Perhaps you have had a long day. Perhaps you simply enjoy falling asleep to thoughts about the remarkable journeys happening all around us, often unseen, often unnoticed. Either way, this space is for you. There is something deeply calming about contemplating migration. Every bird that crosses an ocean, every whale that swims from pole to equator, every butterfly that floats on autumn winds, carries within it a wisdom we are only beginning to understand. You are part of that story. Humans have always been travelers too. Our ancestors walked out of Africa and spread across every continent. The urge to move, to seek, to follow the seasons is written into our deepest nature. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. So settle in. Let the weight of the day drift away. And let us begin with the first of many quiet truths about the world of migration. Migration is patient beyond measure. Some journeys take months. Some cover distances greater than the circumference of the earth. Some are passed down through generations, each new traveler following a path their ancestors traced for millions of years. And yet, within all that patience, there is urgency. The changing of seasons, the need for food, the ancient call to breed in distant lands. Tonight, we will wander through this magnificent world. We will meet the creatures that travel further than any human explorer. We will discover the secrets of navigation that science is still unraveling. And we will uncover truths about migration that may surprise even the most curious minds. But there is no hurry. These journeys have been happening since long before humans walked the earth. They can continue their quiet rhythms while you rest. Let us begin with what migration truly means. Migration is one of the oldest behaviors in the animal kingdom. Long before humans began to wander across continents, creatures were already following invisible pathways across the earth. The earliest evidence of migration stretches back hundreds of millions of years, with ancient fossils suggesting that even prehistoric fish followed seasonal patterns between different bodies of water. This behavior evolved independently in countless species, from insects to mammals, from birds to marine life, each developing their own methods of navigating vast distances. Migration is not simply a learned habit, but is encoded deep within the genetic blueprint of these travelers. It is a survival strategy refined over countless generations, allowing creatures to exploit resources spread across enormous territories. The instinct to migrate is so powerful that even animals raised in captivity will grow restless when the season of travel arrives. This ancient rhythm connects the present to the distant past, reminding us that the journeys we witness today are echoes of movements that began before the continents reached their current positions. The Arctic tern travels further than any other creature on Earth. This remarkable seabird embarks on an annual journey that spans from pole to pole, covering approximately 70,000 kilometers each year. Born in the Arctic summer, the tern chases the sun southward as winter approaches, eventually reaching the Antarctic where it enjoys a second summer. Over the course of its lifetime, which can exceed 30 years, a single Arctic tern may travel the equivalent of 3 round trips to the moon. The tern does not fly in a straight line but follows a winding path that takes advantage of prevailing winds and abundant food sources along the way. Scientists have tracked these birds using tiny geolocators and discovered that some individuals travel even farther than previously believed. The Arctic tern experiences more daylight than any other creature on the planet due to its endless pursuit of summer. This small bird, weighing roughly the same as a mobile phone, demonstrates that the will to migrate can drive even the most delicate creatures to accomplish extraordinary feats of endurance. Some birds fly non-stop for over 11,000 kilometers. The bar-tailed godwit holds the record for the longest non-stop flight by any bird, crossing the Pacific Ocean from Alaska to New Zealand without resting, eating, or drinking. This journey takes approximately 9 days of continuous flight, during which the bird cannot stop because there is no land beneath it. Before departure, these birds nearly double their body weight by storing fat, which serves as fuel for the grueling passage. Their bodies undergo remarkable changes, with digestive organs shrinking to reduce weight and make room for the enlarged flight muscles needed for the marathon. The godwits navigate using a combination of magnetic sensing, star patterns, and an internal map that guides them across featureless ocean. During the flight, they enter a state of partial sleep, allowing one half of the brain to rest, while the other remains alert. This extraordinary feat of endurance demonstrates the incredible adaptations that evolution has produced to enable migration across seemingly impossible distances. Monarch butterflies navigate using the position of the sun. Each autumn, millions of monarch butterflies begin their journey from Canada and the United States to a handful of mountain forests in central Mexico. Despite having brains smaller than a pinhead, these delicate insects possess an internal sun compass that allows them to maintain a consistent southwesterly direction. The butterflies track the sun's position throughout the day, adjusting for its movement across the sky using a biological clock located in their antennae. On cloudy days, they can still navigate using polarized light patterns that human eyes cannot detect. What makes this navigation truly remarkable is that the butterflies undertaking the journey have never been to the destination before and are following a route their great-great-grandparents traveled the previous year. The information needed to find these remote mountain forests appears to be inherited rather than learned. Scientists continue to study how such a complex navigation system can be encoded in the genes of such a small creature, revealing new mysteries with each discovery. Whales sing songs that can travel across entire ocean basins. The haunting melodies produced by humpback whales are among the most complex vocal communications in the animal kingdom. These songs can last for hours and contain intricate patterns of moans, howls, and cries that repeat in precise sequences. Sound travels exceptionally well through water, and whale songs can reach distances of hundreds or even thousands of kilometers under the right conditions. Males sing primarily during the breeding season, and all the males in a given population typically sing the same song, which evolves gradually over time. Scientists believe these songs may serve multiple purposes, including attracting mates, establishing territory, and coordinating group movements during migration. The deep channel in the ocean, known as the SOFAR channel, can carry these sounds across entire ocean basins, potentially allowing whales on opposite sides of the Pacific to hear one another. This acoustic network may help migrating whales communicate their locations and coordinate their journeys across the vast distances they travel between feeding and breeding grounds. Salmon return to the exact river where they were born. After spending years in the open ocean, salmon navigate thousands of kilometers to find the precise stream where they hatched. This remarkable homing ability relies primarily on an exceptional sense of smell that allows the fish to remember the unique chemical signature of their birth waters. As young salmon swim downstream toward the sea for the first time, they imprint on the scent of each tributary they pass, creating a mental map they will later follow in reverse. Once they approach the coastline on their return journey, they begin recognizing familiar scents and turn toward their home river. The salmon fight against powerful currents, leap over waterfalls, and navigate around obstacles, driven by an unstoppable urge to complete their reproductive cycle. Their bodies undergo dramatic changes during this final journey, with many species developing hooked jaws and brilliant colors. After spawning in the same gravel beds where they were born, most salmon die, their bodies providing nutrients that feed the very ecosystem that will nurture the next generation of travelers. The wildebeest migration involves over 1 million animals. Each year across the plains of East Africa, approximately 1.5 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, embark on a circular journey following the seasonal rains. This is the largest overland migration remaining on Earth, a spectacle that has continued for thousands of years. The animals travel roughly 3,000 kilometers annually, constantly searching for the fresh grass that sprouts after the rains. The timing of the migration is driven by the wildebeest's need for nutrient-rich grazing and access to water. Crossing crocodile-infested rivers poses one of the greatest dangers, and each year thousands of animals perish in the churning waters of the Mara and Grumeti rivers. Despite these losses, the sheer numbers ensure the survival of the herds. The thundering hooves of so many animals reshape the landscape, creating paths that remain visible for years and fertilizing the soil with their droppings. This migration supports an entire ecosystem of predators, scavengers, and the countless other creatures that depend on this annual cycle. Some creatures migrate vertically through the ocean each day. Every evening as darkness falls, an enormous movement begins in the world's oceans. Countless billions of zooplankton, small fish, squid and jellyfish rise from the deep waters toward the surface to feed under the cover of night. This daily vertical migration is the largest movement of biomass on the planet, far exceeding any land-based migration in terms of the number of participants. The creatures descend again as dawn approaches, retreating to the safety of darker waters where predators cannot easily spot them. Some travel hundreds of meters each way, a distance that would be equivalent to a human walking several kilometers twice a day. This vertical commute plays a crucial role in ocean ecology, transporting nutrients and carbon from the surface to the depths and vice versa. The animals use changes in light intensity as their primary cue for when to move, creating a wave of migration that ripples through the water column. Scientists estimate that this daily migration has been occurring for hundreds of millions of years, making it one of the most ancient and persistent patterns of movement on Earth. Birds can sense the Earth's magnetic field for navigation. Migrating birds possess a remarkable ability to detect the Earth's magnetic field and use it as an internal compass. This magnetoreception allows them to determine direction even when the sun is obscured and the stars are hidden. Scientists believe that birds detect magnetic fields through two possible mechanisms working together. Tiny particles of magnetite in their beaks may act like compass needles, while special proteins in their eyes called cryptochromes may allow them to actually see the magnetic field as patterns of light and shadow overlaying their normal vision. The magnetic sense appears to be calibrated against the sun and stars, allowing birds to maintain accurate navigation even as the magnetic field gradually shifts over time. Young birds seem to inherit a basic magnetic map from their parents, which they refine through experience during their first migrations. This sense is so precise that birds can detect variations in magnetic intensity of less than 1%, allowing them to recognize magnetic landmarks along their migration routes. The discovery of this ability has revolutionized our understanding of how birds navigate across featureless oceans and deserts. The bar-tailed godwit holds the record for longest non-stop flight. In autumn, these remarkable shorebirds gather on the mudflats of Alaska, feeding intensively until they have nearly doubled their body weight. When the conditions are right, they launch into an epic flight that will carry them across the entire Pacific Ocean to New Zealand. The journey covers nearly 12,000 kilometers and takes approximately 8 to 10 days of continuous flying without any opportunity to stop, rest, eat, or drink. Scientists tracked one individual that flew over 13,000 kilometers non-stop, the longest recorded flight by any bird. Before departure, the godwit's body undergoes remarkable changes, with internal organs shrinking to make room for the fat reserves and enlarged muscles needed for the journey. The birds navigate using the stars, the sun, the Earth's magnetic field, and possibly even the pattern of ocean swells below. This extreme migration pushes the limits of what is physiologically possible for any animal. The godwit proves that evolution can produce travelers capable of crossing seemingly impossible distances when survival depends upon reaching distant shores. Eels travel thousands of miles to breed in the Sargasso Sea. The European eel undertakes one of the most mysterious migrations in the natural world, traveling from rivers and lakes across Europe to a region of the Atlantic Ocean called the Sargasso Sea. This journey spans thousands of kilometers, yet no adult eel has ever been observed making the trip, and no eel has ever been seen spawning in the wild. What scientists know comes from tracking the arrival of tiny transparent larvae called glass eels at European coasts, working backward to determine where the journey must have begun. The eels spend most of their lives in fresh water, but as they mature, their bodies undergo dramatic transformations in preparation for the long journey. Their eyes enlarge to see in the dark ocean depths, their skin becomes silvery, and their digestive systems shut down entirely. They will never eat again, relying on stored fat reserves to fuel the entire migration. After spawning, the adults presumably die, while their offspring drift on ocean currents for up to 3 years before reaching the rivers their parents once called home. Caribou herds walk further than any other land animal. Each year, caribou herds in the Arctic undertake migrations that can cover over 5,000 kilometers, the longest overland migration of any terrestrial mammal. These journeys take the animals from their winter feeding grounds in the boreal forests to the open tundra, where they give birth and spend the summer months. The timing of caribou migration is linked to the seasonal availability of lichens, grasses, and the need to escape biting insects that swarm in the millions during the Arctic summer. Caribou hooves change with the seasons, becoming spongy in summer for better grip on soft tundra and hardening in winter to break through crusted snow and ice. The herds can number in the hundreds of thousands, creating rivers of animals that flow across the landscape. Indigenous peoples have followed these migrations for thousands of years, their cultures and survival intimately connected to the caribou's ancient rhythms. Climate change is now affecting traditional migration routes, as warmer temperatures alter snow conditions and the timing of plant growth that the caribou depend upon. Humpback whales travel from polar seas to tropical waters. Every year, humpback whales undertake one of the longest migrations of any mammal, journeying up to 8,000 kilometers between their feeding grounds near the poles and their breeding grounds in warm tropical waters. During the summer months, they feast on krill and small fish in the nutrient-rich polar seas, building up the fat reserves they will need to survive the months ahead. As winter approaches, they begin the long swim toward the equator, where the calmer, warmer waters provide safe conditions for giving birth and nursing their young. The whales eat almost nothing during this breeding season, living entirely off their stored blubber, while the mothers produce the rich milk their calves require. Male humpbacks sing their famous songs during the breeding season, the complex melodies echoing through the tropical waters. Scientists have discovered that different populations take different routes, with some whales from the same feeding grounds ending up at different breeding sites. This migration brings nutrients from the poles to the tropics, as whale waste fertilizes waters that would otherwise be relatively barren. Some insects migrate in swarms that darken the sky. Locusts are among the most dramatic migrating insects, capable of forming swarms so vast that they can block out the sun and stretch across hundreds of square kilometers. A single swarm can contain billions of individuals, each one consuming its body weight in vegetation every day. These swarms can travel hundreds of kilometers in a single day, carried by the wind across deserts, mountains, and sometimes even across seas. The transformation from solitary grasshopper to swarming locust is triggered by crowding, which causes changes in their brain chemistry, coloration, and behavior. Once the swarm forms, it moves as a coordinated mass, with individuals constantly landing to feed while others take flight, creating a rolling wave of destruction. Swarms have plagued agricultural regions throughout human history, and ancient texts from many cultures describe the devastation they cause. Despite modern monitoring and control efforts, locust outbreaks continue to threaten food security for millions of people. The migration patterns of locusts are influenced by weather systems, and climate change is altering the frequency and severity of these swarm events. Leatherback turtles cross entire oceans to nest on specific beaches. The leatherback turtle is the largest of all living turtles, and undertakes some of the most impressive migrations in the reptile world. These ancient mariners can travel over 10,000 kilometers between their feeding grounds in temperate and subpolar waters, and the tropical beaches where they lay their eggs. Unlike other sea turtles, leatherbacks possess a unique physiology that allows them to regulate their body temperature, enabling them to hunt jellyfish in waters too cold for other reptiles. Their shells are not hard but covered in leathery skin, which gives them their name, and allows for greater flexibility during deep dives. Females return to nest on the same beaches where they themselves hatched, sometimes decades earlier. The journey is fraught with dangers, from fishing nets and plastic pollution to shark attacks, and the exhausting act of egg-laying itself. Leatherbacks have existed for over 100 million years, surviving the extinction event that destroyed the dinosaurs. Today, These gentle giants face unprecedented challenges, as warming oceans alter their food sources and rising seas threaten their nesting beaches. Swallows return to the same nesting sites year after year. The remarkable site fidelity of swallows has fascinated humans for centuries, with these small birds often returning to the exact same building, barn, or cliff face where they nested the previous year. Barn swallows in particular are famous for their long-distance migrations, with birds from Europe traveling thousands of kilometers to spend the winter in sub-Saharan Africa. Despite the vast distances involved, individual swallows have been recorded returning to the same nest, sometimes using it for multiple consecutive years. This behavior requires extraordinary navigation skills, as the birds must find their way across continents, deserts, and seas to locate a single structure in a specific village. Young swallows learn their first migration route from experienced adults, but must find their own nesting sites when they return. Studies using tiny tracking devices have revealed that swallows take different routes in spring and autumn, optimizing for seasonal winds and food availability. The annual return of the swallows has been celebrated in cultures around the world, marking the arrival of spring and the promise of warmer days ahead. The grey whale makes one of the longest mammal migrations. Each year, grey whales travel approximately 20,000 kilometers round trip between their feeding grounds in the Arctic and their breeding lagoons in Baja California, making this one of the longest migrations of any mammal. The journey takes the whales along the entire western coast of North America, where they can often be spotted from shore as they pass through. Grey whales feed primarily in the shallow waters of the Bering and Chukchi seas, using their baleen plates to filter small crustaceans from the muddy bottom. Pregnant females make the journey south first, timing their arrival to give birth in the warm, protected lagoons, where there are few predators to threaten their calves. The newborn whales remain in these sheltered waters, nursing and building strength before the long journey north. Grey whales were hunted to near extinction twice in modern history, but have made a remarkable recovery under international protection. These whales are unusually tolerant of boats and are known to approach vessels in the breeding lagoons, allowing extraordinarily close encounters with humans who have traveled to witness this ancient migration. Dragonflies can migrate across the Indian Ocean. The globe skimmer dragonfly undertakes what may be the longest migration of any insect, a journey that spans multiple generations and crosses thousands of kilometers of open ocean. These delicate-looking insects travel from India to East Africa and back again, hopping across the Maldives, the Seychelles, and other islands along the way. The entire round trip covers approximately 14,000 kilometers, which is remarkable for a creature that weighs less than a gram. No single dragonfly completes the entire journey. Instead, the migration is completed over 4 generations, with each generation flying one leg and breeding before the next continues. The dragonflies time their movements to coincide with the monsoon winds, which provide a tailwind that makes the ocean crossings possible. Scientists discovered this migration by noticing that dragonflies would appear in enormous numbers on remote islands at predictable times each year. The journey is timed perfectly with rainfall patterns, ensuring that the dragonflies arrive at each destination when pools of water are available for them to breed in before the next generation takes flight. Some bats migrate thousands of miles between seasons. While many bat species hibernate through the winter, others undertake impressive migrations that rival those of birds. The Mexican free-tailed bat, for example, travels from the southern United States to Mexico and back each year, covering thousands of kilometers. Some European bat species migrate from as far north as Scandinavia to wintering grounds in southern Europe. The journey is particularly challenging for these small mammals because they must find suitable roost sites along the way and cannot store as much fat as birds do. Bats migrate at night using their echolocation abilities along with other still poorly understood navigation mechanisms to find their way. Scientists have discovered that bats may use the Earth's magnetic field and the pattern of stars to orient themselves during long flights. The longest recorded bat migration was approximately 2,000 kilometers, though some species may travel even further. Conservation of migratory bat populations requires protecting not only their summer and winter roosts, but also the crucial stopover sites where they rest and feed during their journeys. Geese fly in V formation to conserve energy. The characteristic V-shaped flight pattern of migrating geese is one of nature's most elegant examples of energy conservation. When a bird flaps its wings, it creates a swirling vortex of air behind it that provides an uplift for the bird following. By positioning themselves just behind and to the side of the bird ahead, geese can reduce the energy they need to fly by up to 25%. The lead bird works hardest, breaking through the air resistance, but the flock rotates this position so that no single bird becomes exhausted. Scientists have confirmed that the heart rates of geese flying in formation are lower than those flying alone. The birds also coordinate their wing beats, timing their flaps to catch the rising air created by the bird in front. This cooperative strategy allows geese to travel much further on their migration than they could as individuals. The formation also aids communication, allowing the birds to see and hear each other clearly. This behavior has inspired human engineers, who have studied how aircraft might fly in similar formations to save fuel. The Christmas Island red crab migration turns the island crimson. Each year, around 50 million red crabs emerge from the forest floors of Christmas Island and begin their march toward the sea. This spectacular migration occurs at the beginning of the wet season, triggered by the arrival of the monsoon rains. The crabs spend most of the year in burrows in the rainforest, emerging only when conditions are humid enough to prevent them from drying out during the journey. The roads of the island become rivers of crimson as the crabs make their way down from the plateau to the coastal terraces. Local authorities close roads and build special crab bridges to help the creatures cross safely. Males arrive at the sea first, digging burrows in the sand where mating will occur. Females follow soon after, and once fertilized, they release their eggs directly into the ocean, timing this moment precisely with the turning of the tides. The spectacle has made Christmas Island famous around the world, drawing visitors who come to witness this ancient migration that has been occurring long before humans arrived on the island. Elephant seals travel vast distances to feed in deep waters. Northern elephant seals are among the most impressive divers in the animal kingdom, routinely descending to depths of over 1 kilometer in search of food. Twice each year, they haul out onto the beaches of California and Mexico, once to breed and once to molt their skin. Between these visits to land, they undertake enormous migrations across the Pacific Ocean, with males and females following completely different routes. Males travel north toward Alaska, while females head west into the open Pacific. During these journeys, which can cover over 20,000 kilometers annually, the seals spend almost all their time diving, surfacing only briefly to breathe before descending again. They can hold their breath for up to 2 hours and sleep while sinking slowly through the water column. Scientists have attached tracking devices to these animals and discovered that they feed primarily on deep-water fish and squid that live in the twilight zone of the ocean. The seals return to the same beaches year after year, hauling their massive bodies onto the sand after months at sea. Some fish follow underwater currents for thousands of miles. The ocean is crisscrossed by vast rivers of moving water, and many fish species have evolved to use these currents as highways for their migrations. Bluefin tuna, for example, travel across the entire Atlantic Ocean, using the Gulf Stream and other currents to aid their journey between spawning grounds in the Mediterranean and feeding grounds off North America. These powerful swimmers can reach speeds of over 70 km/h in short bursts, but for long migrations they conserve energy by riding the currents. Smaller fish and larvae are even more dependent on these ocean highways, drifting with the currents to locations where they will grow to adulthood. The paths taken by different species have been refined over countless generations, with the most successful routes becoming genetically encoded in the populations. Climate change is now altering these current patterns, forcing some fish to find new migration routes or face declining populations. Understanding these underwater highways is crucial for managing fisheries and protecting the species that depend on them for survival. Albatrosses can circumnavigate the globe multiple times. The wandering albatross spends most of its life in flight, covering enormous distances as it circles the Southern Ocean in search of food. With the longest wingspan of any living bird, reaching over 3.5 meters, the albatross is perfectly designed for gliding on ocean winds. These birds use a technique called dynamic soaring, extracting energy from the difference in wind speed at various altitudes to travel vast distances with minimal effort. A single foraging trip can cover thousands of kilometers as the bird searches for squid and fish across the waves. Over the course of its lifetime, which can exceed 50 years, an albatross may fly millions of kilometers, the equivalent of flying to the moon and back several times. Albatrosses return to land only to breed, often to the same remote islands where they themselves hatched. Pairs mate for life, and their elaborate courtship dances, involving synchronized movements and vocalizations, strengthen the bond between partners who may spend months apart at sea. Monarch butterflies take multiple generations to complete their journey. Unlike most migratory animals that make the round trip themselves, monarch butterflies require several generations to complete their annual cycle. The butterflies that fly south from Canada to Mexico in autumn belong to a special supergeneration that lives up to 8 months, instead of the usual few weeks. These individuals overwinter in mountain forests, clustering by the millions on specific trees that their ancestors have used for thousands of years. When spring arrives, they begin flying north but do not make it all the way back to Canada. Instead, they breed in the southern United States, and their offspring continue the journey northward. It takes 3 or 4 generations to repopulate the northern range, with each successive generation living only a few weeks before reproducing and dying. Somehow, the autumn generation knows to fly thousands of kilometers to a place they have never been, using navigation skills encoded in their genes. This multi-generational relay race is one of the most remarkable phenomena in the insect world, connecting millions of individual lives into a single, continuous journey. Painted lady butterflies migrate from Africa to the Arctic Circle. The painted lady butterfly undertakes one of the longest insect migrations in the world, traveling from sub-Saharan Africa to Scandinavia and back again. This journey spans approximately 15,000 kilometers and, like the monarch, takes multiple generations to complete. The butterflies begin their journey in the African savanna, moving northward across the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea as spring advances. They breed continuously along the way, with successive generations pushing deeper into Europe until some reach as far north as the Arctic Circle. When autumn arrives, the surviving butterflies begin the return journey south, though this leg of the migration was only recently confirmed when scientists used radar to track high-flying butterflies crossing the English Channel. The painted lady is found on every continent except South America and Antarctica, making it one of the most widespread butterflies in the world. Unlike monarchs, which concentrate in specific overwintering sites, painted ladies are nomadic, following the seasons and the blooming of the plants their caterpillars need. Some sharks migrate seasonally between warm and cold waters. The great white shark is one of many shark species that undertake long-distance migrations, following prey and seeking optimal conditions for different activities. Scientists have tracked individual great whites traveling from the coasts of California to the middle of the Pacific Ocean and back again, a round trip of over 8,000 kilometers. Male and female sharks often follow different routes and have separate feeding and mating grounds. Blue sharks are among the most widely traveled, with some individuals crossing entire ocean basins multiple times during their lives. Whale sharks migrate thousands of kilometers to reach areas where plankton blooms provide abundant food. Sharks navigate using a combination of senses, including the ability to detect magnetic fields and possibly the scent of different water masses. These migrations are crucial for the health of shark populations, allowing individuals to find food, mates, and suitable nursery areas for their young. Understanding shark migration routes has become essential for conservation efforts, as many sharks are caught incidentally by fishing fleets operating along these pathways. Snow geese gather in flocks of hundreds of thousands. Each spring and autumn, the skies above North America fill with vast flocks of snow geese migrating between their Arctic breeding grounds and their wintering areas in the southern United States and Mexico. These flocks can number in the hundreds of thousands, creating a spectacle that has inspired awe in observers for thousands of years. At certain staging areas along the migration route, so many geese gather that they turn entire lakes and fields white with their presence. Snow geese fly in large, undulating formations that shift and change constantly, with birds continuously adjusting their positions. The sound of thousands of geese calling to one another can be heard from miles away, a chorus that announces their arrival before they come into view. Family groups stay together during migration, with young geese learning the route from their parents during their first journey south. The population of snow geese has increased dramatically in recent decades, so much so that in some areas their grazing is damaging Arctic wetlands. Conservation managers now face the unusual challenge of controlling a species that has become too successful. Marine turtles return to the beach, where they hatched decades earlier. The ability of sea turtles to return to their natal beaches after decades at sea remains one of the great mysteries of animal navigation. A female green turtle may spend 20 or 30 years roaming the oceans before she is ready to breed, yet she returns to lay her eggs on the same stretch of sand, where she emerged from her own eggshell. Studies have shown that turtles can recognize the unique magnetic signature of their home beach, a fingerprint in the Earth's field that they imprint upon during their first moments of life. They may also use chemical cues, remembering the particular scent of the sand and water. This homing ability means that turtle populations at different beaches are genetically distinct, each adapted to the specific conditions of their ancestral nesting grounds. The journey back can cover thousands of kilometers, with turtles navigating across featureless ocean using the sun, the stars, and the magnetic field. This remarkable fidelity to their birthplace makes turtle populations particularly vulnerable to local disturbances, as a damaged beach may lose its breeding population entirely. Reindeer can travel over 5,000 kilometers each year. The reindeer of the Arctic undertake some of the longest land migrations of any mammal, driven by the changing seasons and the need to find food in the harsh northern environment. In summer, the herd spread across the tundra, feeding on grasses, lichens, and other vegetation that flourishes during the brief growing season. As winter approaches, they move south into the boreal forests, where they can find shelter from the worst weather and dig through snow to reach the lichens beneath. The routes these animals follow have been used for thousands of years, worn into the landscape by generations of hooves. Indigenous peoples such as the Sami of Scandinavia and the Nenuts of Siberia have built their entire cultures around following these migrating herds. Reindeer are superbly adapted to the cold, with hollow hairs that provide exceptional insulation and specialized hooves that act like snowshoes. Climate change is now affecting traditional migration patterns, as warmer temperatures change the vegetation and create ice layers that prevent the reindeer from reaching their food beneath the snow. The ruby-throated hummingbird crosses the Gulf of Mexico in one flight. Despite weighing only a few grams, the ruby-throated hummingbird makes one of the most daring migrations in the bird world, crossing the Gulf of Mexico in a single non-stop flight of over 800 kilometers. Before departure, these tiny birds feed intensively, nearly doubling their weight by storing fat in their bodies. The crossing takes approximately 18 to 20 hours of continuous flight, during which the hummingbird beats its wings over 2 million times. There is no opportunity to stop, rest, or refuel over the open water, making careful preparation essential for survival. Some individuals take a longer route around the Gulf, hugging the coastline through Texas and Mexico, but many choose the direct path across the sea. Scientists have marveled at how such a small creature can accomplish such an epic journey, as the energy requirements are enormous relative to the bird's size. The hummingbirds time their crossing to take advantage of favorable winds, and make landfall hungry, but alive on the Yucatan Peninsula or along the Gulf Coast. This migration has been happening for thousands of years, an annual gamble that these remarkable birds take to reach their breeding grounds in the north. Zooplankton perform the largest migration on Earth every single day. As the sun sets over the world's oceans, an ancient migration begins. Billions upon billions of tiny zooplankton begin rising from the depths toward the surface, creating the largest daily movement of biomass on the planet. This vertical migration occurs in every ocean and has been happening for hundreds of millions of years. The creatures spend the daylight hours in the dark, cold waters below, safe from visual predators that hunt near the surface. Under the cover of darkness, they ascend to feed on the phytoplankton that live in the sunlit upper layer. Some travel hundreds of meters each way, a distance that would be equivalent to a human walking several kilometers twice a day. The movement of so many organisms has a significant effect on ocean chemistry, transporting carbon and nutrients between the surface and the depths. This biological pump helps regulate the global climate by sequestering carbon in the deep ocean. The migration creates a wave of feeding activity that ripples up the food chain, as fish, squid, and whales follow the zooplankton to feast on the nightly bounty. Some jellyfish migrate vertically through the water column. Many jellyfish species undertake daily vertical migrations, rising toward the surface at night and sinking to deeper waters during the day. Unlike the zooplankton they often resemble, jellyfish are active swimmers that pulse their bell-shaped bodies to move through the water. The famous golden jellyfish of Palau's Jellyfish Lake follow the sun across the lake each day, maintaining their position in the warmest, brightest water, where the symbiotic algae living in their tissues can photosynthesize. This horizontal migration across the lake is combined with a vertical descent in the afternoon to nitrogen-rich deeper waters. Box jellyfish migrate toward shore at night to hunt in the shallows, creating a danger for night swimmers in tropical waters. Some deep-sea jellyfish migrate vertically over hundreds of meters, following their prey or avoiding predators. The movements of jellyfish populations can have significant effects on marine ecosystems, as their voracious appetites can deplete fish larvae and other zooplankton. Scientists are increasingly studying jellyfish migrations, as climate change alters ocean conditions in ways that appear to favor these ancient and adaptable creatures. African elephants follow ancient migration routes for water. Across the savannas of Africa, elephants have followed the same migration corridors for thousands of years, their routes connecting distant water sources and seasonal feeding grounds. These paths have been passed down through generations, with young elephants learning the way from the matriarchs who lead each family group. The oldest females carry mental maps of the landscape, remembering the locations of waterholes that may only be visited once every few years during severe droughts. Elephant migration routes can cover hundreds of kilometers, crossing through forests, grasslands, and increasingly human settlements and farmland. The animals play a crucial ecological role during their journeys, dispersing seeds, creating paths through dense vegetation, and digging waterholes that benefit countless other species. As human populations expand, many traditional elephant corridors have been blocked or fragmented, forcing the animals to alter routes that served them for countless generations. Conservation efforts now focus on maintaining connectivity between protected areas, creating wildlife corridors that allow elephants to continue their ancient migrations through an increasingly crowded landscape. The common swift can stay airborne for 10 months without landing. The common swift is one of the most aerial birds on the planet, capable of remaining in continuous flight for up to 10 months at a time. These remarkable birds eat, drink, sleep, and even mate on the wing, touching down only when it is time to nest and raise their young. Young swifts that have not yet bred may spend their first 2 or 3 years without ever landing, circling the skies in an endless journey. Scientists have confirmed these extraordinary flights using tiny data loggers attached to the bird's legs, which record every moment of activity. The swifts migrate between Europe and Africa, but even during migration they never need to stop, covering thousands of kilometers while remaining airborne. They sleep on the wing by ascending to high altitudes at dusk and entering a state of reduced activity, drifting on air currents through the night. Their crescent-shaped wings and streamlined bodies are perfectly adapted for this aerial existence. The swift's relationship with the sky is so complete that their tiny feet are almost useless for walking, adapted only for clinging to vertical surfaces during the brief nesting season. Crabs march in millions from forest to sea to release their eggs. On tropical islands around the world, land crabs undertake spectacular migrations from their forest homes to the sea, timing their journeys to coincide with the lunar cycle and the tides. The Christmas Island red crab migration is the most famous example, but similar spectacles occur in Cuba, Australia, and many other locations. These crabs spend most of their lives on land, breathing through modified gills that must be kept moist. The journey to the sea can be perilous, with the crabs facing dehydration, exhaustion, and predation along the way. Males typically arrive first, digging burrows in the beach where mating will occur. Females join them soon after, and following fertilization, they carry their developing eggs for about 2 weeks. When the time is right, usually at high tide during the last quarter of the moon, the females release their eggs directly into the sea. The water churns with millions of eggs, and the baby crabs that survive will eventually make their way back to the forest, where they will grow until they are ready to make the journey themselves. Songbirds navigate using the stars at night. Many songbirds migrate under the cover of darkness, using the pattern of stars to find their way across continents. This ability was first demonstrated in planetariums, where researchers showed that birds would orient themselves correctly when shown the actual night sky, but became confused when the star pattern was artificially rotated. Young birds appear to learn the night sky by observing the rotation of stars around the celestial pole, using this fixed point as a reference for their internal compass. Unlike magnetic navigation, which can be affected by local anomalies, stellar navigation provides a reliable reference that remains constant night after night. The birds coordinate their star compass with other navigation systems, including their magnetic sense and their ability to read the position of the sun at dusk. Migrating at night offers several advantages, including cooler temperatures that prevent overheating during sustained flight, and reduced predation from hawks and falcons that hunt by day. Light pollution from cities now poses a significant threat to these nocturnal travelers, as the artificial glow can obscure the stars they rely upon and draw them into dangerous urban areas. The sooty shearwater travels over 60,000 kilometers annually. The sooty shearwater undertakes one of the longest migrations of any bird, circumnavigating the Pacific Ocean in an enormous figure-8 pattern that covers more than 60,000 kilometers each year. These dark, medium-sized seabirds breed on islands around New Zealand and southern South America during the southern hemisphere's summer. When winter approaches, they head north across the equator, following the coastlines and food sources along the eastern and western edges of the Pacific. Some birds travel up the coast of the Americas toward Alaska, while others follow the Asian coast toward Japan. The journey forms a giant loop that takes advantage of prevailing winds and abundant food sources at different latitudes. Scientists tracked these birds using tiny geolocators and were astonished to discover the true extent of their travels. The shearwaters spend their non-breeding months in a perpetual summer, following the seasons between the hemispheres. This lifestyle exposes them to conditions in oceans thousands of kilometers apart, making them sensitive indicators of the health of marine ecosystems across the entire Pacific Basin. Some amphibians migrate to ancestral breeding ponds each spring. When the first warm rains of spring arrive, many amphibian species begin their annual journey to the ponds and pools where they will breed. Frogs, toads, and salamanders may travel considerable distances overland, navigating through forests and across roads to reach the waters where they were born. Some species show remarkable fidelity to specific sites, returning to the same pond year after year, even if apparently suitable alternatives exist nearby. The spotted salamander of eastern North America migrates to woodland pools on rainy nights, creating a phenomenon known as Big Night, when thousands of salamanders may be encountered on a single road. Many amphibians navigate using olfactory cues, following the scent of their home pond, carried on the wind. Others appear to use the Earth's magnetic field, or the position of celestial bodies. These migrations bring amphibians into contact with roads, where vehicle strikes can devastate local populations. Conservation groups now organize volunteer efforts to help amphibians cross busy roads during peak migration nights, carrying the creatures safely across in buckets. Penguins walk hundreds of kilometers across Antarctic ice to breed. Emperor penguins undertake one of the most grueling migrations on Earth, walking up to 100 kilometers across the frozen Antarctic ice to reach their breeding colonies. Unlike most birds that nest during the warmer months, emperors breed in the depths of the Antarctic winter, when temperatures can plunge below -60 degrees Celsius. The females lay a single egg and then immediately pass it to their mates, who balance the egg on their feet beneath a warm fold of skin. The females then walk back to the sea to feed, while the males endure 2 months of darkness and blizzards without eating, huddling together for warmth. When the chicks hatch, the females return with food, having walked hundreds of kilometers round trip while their partners fasted. The timing of this migration is critical, as the chicks must grow quickly during the brief Antarctic summer before the sea ice breaks up and forces them to swim. This extreme breeding strategy is unique among penguins and may have evolved to give emperor chicks enough time to grow before their first winter. Birds can double their body weight before long migrations. In preparation for their epic journeys, many migratory birds undergo a period of hyperphagia, feeding intensively until they have nearly doubled their body weight in fat. This stored energy will fuel flights that may last days, without any opportunity to stop and eat. The process is triggered by changing day length, which alters the bird's hormones and drives an insatiable appetite. A bar-tailed godwit, for example, increases its body weight from around 300 grams to over 600 grams before its non-stop flight across the Pacific. The fat is deposited beneath the skin and around internal organs, transforming the bird's body into a flying fuel tank. Remarkably, the birds also shrink their digestive organs during this time, reducing weight and making room for more fat storage. Flight muscles grow larger while unnecessary tissues diminish. This ability to gain weight rapidly and then burn it efficiently during sustained flight represents one of evolution's most impressive solutions to the challenge of long-distance migration. The great white shark migrates between continents. Great white sharks are among the ocean's most impressive travelers, undertaking migrations that span entire ocean basins and cross from continent to continent. Scientists have tracked individual sharks traveling from South Africa to Australia and back, a round trip of over 20,000 kilometers. Others travel from California to a remote region of the Pacific dubbed the White Shark Cafe, where they dive repeatedly to great depths for reasons scientists are still trying to understand. These journeys take the sharks through waters of varying temperatures, and while great whites are often thought of as warm water predators, they are actually capable of maintaining elevated body temperatures that allow them to hunt in quite cold seas. The sharks appear to follow seasonal movements of prey species, particularly seals and sea lions, but may also be seeking mates at distant locations. Each shark seems to have individual preferences for routes and destinations, though some patterns are shared across the population. Understanding these migrations has become crucial for conservation, as the sharks cross through many different national jurisdictions and face threats ranging from fishing nets to trophy hunting. Locusts form swarms that can travel across countries. When conditions are right, normally solitary grasshoppers undergo a dramatic transformation, developing into the swarming phase we know as locusts. These swarms can contain billions of individuals and cover hundreds of square kilometers, consuming everything in their path as they move across the landscape. A single square kilometer of swarm can contain as many as 80 million locusts, each one eating its own body weight in vegetation every day. The swarms do not simply drift on the wind but display a remarkable ability to maintain coherent movement and direction. Individual locusts align themselves with their neighbors, and this simple rule produces the complex, coordinated behavior of the swarm. Desert locusts can travel over 100 kilometers in a day, crossing borders and sometimes even seas. Swarms from Africa have been recorded reaching the Caribbean, carried by trade winds across the Atlantic Ocean. These migrations have caused devastating famines throughout human history and continue to threaten food security in many regions today. Climate change may be increasing the frequency of conditions that trigger swarm formation. Some antelope species follow the rains across the savanna. Across the savannas of Africa, numerous antelope species migrate in response to the seasonal rains that transform the landscape from dry brown grass to lush green grazing. Thomson's gazelles, topi and eland all participate in these movements, sometimes accompanying the great wildebeest herds and sometimes following their own distinct routes. The timing of these migrations varies by species, with some antelope arriving ahead of the main herds to exploit the freshest grass, and others following behind to feed on different vegetation layers. The patterns have evolved over thousands of years, with each species finding its own ecological niche within the shared ecosystem. In the vast Kalahari Desert, springbok once migrated in herds so large that they took days to pass a single point, though these great treks no longer occur due to fencing and hunting. The oryx of Namibia still undertake remarkable journeys across some of the most hostile terrain on Earth, surviving on moisture extracted from the plants they eat. These migrations demonstrate how closely the lives of grazing animals are tied to the seasonal pulse of water and growth. Cuckoos fly from Europe to Africa and back each year. The common cuckoo is famous for laying its eggs in other birds' nests, but this brood parasite is also an impressive migrant. Each autumn, cuckoos leave Europe and Western Asia for wintering grounds in tropical Africa, a journey of several thousand kilometers. The adults depart first, leaving their offspring, who have been raised by foster parents of different species, to make the journey unguided. Remarkably, young cuckoos that have never seen Africa and have never met an adult of their own species successfully navigate to the correct region on their first attempt. This navigation ability must be entirely genetic, a pre-programmed flight path inherited from parents they never knew. Scientists have tracked cuckoos using tiny satellite transmitters and discovered that birds from different European populations take distinct routes to Africa, some crossing the Mediterranean and Sahara directly, while others detour around these obstacles. The return journey in spring can be equally impressive, with some individuals making remarkably fast passages to reach their breeding territories before rivals. The cuckoo's call announcing spring has inspired poetry and folklore across Europe for thousands of years. Blue whales follow krill blooms across the oceans. The largest animals ever to exist on Earth depend entirely on some of the smallest, and the blue whale's migrations are driven by the seasonal abundance of tiny crustaceans called krill. These magnificent whales can consume up to 6 tons of krill per day during the feeding season, filtering enormous volumes of water through their baleen plates. Blue whales migrate between high-latitude feeding grounds, where krill swarms in nutrient-rich cold waters, and lower-latitude breeding areas where they mate and give birth. The journey can cover thousands of kilometers, with some populations traveling from Antarctic waters to tropical coastlines. Unlike many whales, blue whales often do not eat during the breeding season, and may lose a significant percentage of their body weight before returning to feeding grounds. Scientists have tracked individual whales using electronic tags and discovered that their movements closely match the blooming of krill populations. This dependence on a single prey species makes blue whales particularly vulnerable to changes in ocean conditions. Climate change is altering the timing and distribution of krill blooms, potentially disrupting the ancient migration patterns these giants have followed for millions of years. The wandering albatross has the longest wingspan of any bird. With a wingspan exceeding 3.5 meters, the wandering albatross is supremely adapted for life on the wing over the Southern Ocean. These magnificent birds use their enormous wings to glide effortlessly on the fierce winds that circle Antarctica, traveling vast distances with minimal expenditure of energy. The albatross exploits differences in wind speed at various heights above the waves, rising into faster-moving air to gain momentum, and then swooping down to fly just above the wave crests. This technique, called dynamic soaring, allows them to cover hundreds of kilometers in a single day without flapping their wings. Wandering albatrosses spend most of their lives at sea, coming to land only to breed on remote subantarctic islands. A breeding pair may take over a year to raise a single chick, with each parent making foraging trips that cover thousands of kilometers. The birds can live for over 50 years, and pair bonds, once formed, often last a lifetime. Sadly, these magnificent mariners face threats from longline fishing operations, where they are hooked and drowned while attempting to steal bait. Some moths migrate at altitudes higher than Mount Everest. The bogong moth of Australia undertakes a remarkable migration that takes it to altitudes exceeding those of the highest mountains. Each spring, billions of these moths leave the agricultural plains of southern Australia and fly over 1,000 kilometers to specific caves in the Australian Alps. They navigate using the Earth's magnetic field and the pattern of stars, flying mainly at night. But what makes their journey truly extraordinary is the altitude at which they travel. Radar studies have detected bogong moths flying at heights of over 6,000 meters, far higher than Mount Kosciuszko, and approaching the cruising altitude of commercial aircraft. At these extreme heights, the air is thin and cold, yet the moths persist, possibly taking advantage of high-altitude winds to speed their journey. Once in the mountains, they spend the summer resting in cool caves, packed together in enormous clusters that once provided food for indigenous Australians. When autumn arrives, they return to the lowlands to breed, and then their offspring will repeat the journey the following spring. Wildebeest calves can run within minutes of being born. One of the most remarkable aspects of the great wildebeest migration is the synchronized calving that occurs as the herds reach the lush grazing of the Serengeti Plains. Over 400,000 calves are typically born within a period of just 2 or 3 weeks, a strategy that overwhelms predators through sheer numbers. From the moment of birth, the calves face a race against time. They must stand, walk and run within minutes of entering the world, as the herd cannot wait for stragglers. A newborn wildebeest that cannot keep pace with its mother will quickly fall prey to lions, hyenas, or wild dogs that follow the migration specifically to exploit this vulnerable moment. The rapid development is possible because wildebeest calves are precocial, born in an advanced state of development compared to many other mammals. Their legs are long and strong from the moment of birth, and within days they can match their mother's pace. This early mobility is essential for an animal whose survival depends on constant movement, a small wonder of nature occurring thousands of times each day during the calving season. Bar-headed geese fly over the Himalayas at extreme altitudes. Twice each year, bar-headed geese fly over the highest mountains on Earth, crossing the Himalayan range at altitudes where most birds could not survive. These remarkable birds have been tracked flying at over 7,000 meters, passing directly over peaks that mountaineers require supplemental oxygen to climb. At these extreme heights, the air contains only a third of the oxygen found at sea level, yet the geese continue to flap their wings in powered flight. Their success is due to a suite of physiological adaptations, including hemoglobin that binds oxygen more efficiently, larger lungs, and more efficient breathing patterns. The birds also have enhanced heart capacity and dense networks of blood vessels in their flight muscles. Rather than riding thermals like many high-altitude birds, bar-headed geese actively flap their way over the mountains, an energetically expensive strategy that allows them to make the crossing even in still air. The journey from their breeding grounds in Central Asia to their wintering areas in India takes only a few days. Scientists have fitted geese with tracking devices and found that they often fly at night when the air is denser and cooler, making oxygen extraction slightly easier. The blue wildebeest follows a circular path through East Africa. The Great Migration of the Serengeti is not a journey with a beginning and end, but an endless circular movement that follows the rains through East Africa. Over 1 million wildebeest, accompanied by hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, move clockwise through an area spanning Tanzania and Kenya. The animals are driven by their need for fresh grass and water, following the growth that emerges after each season's rainfall. In the dry season, they concentrate near permanent water sources, then spread out across the plains as the wet season brings moisture to a wider area. The circular nature of the migration means that the herds are constantly on the move, rarely staying in one place for more than a few days. This perpetual motion has shaped the entire ecosystem, with predators, scavengers, and even plants adapted to the rhythm of the herd's passage. The wildebeest themselves are perfectly suited to this nomadic lifestyle, their bodies built for endurance, and their digestive systems able to extract nutrition from even poor quality grass. Some spiders migrate by ballooning on silk threads. Spiders are not typically thought of as migratory animals, but many species disperse over enormous distances by riding the wind on threads of silk. This behavior, called ballooning, allows tiny spiders to travel hundreds of kilometers, sometimes reaching altitudes of several thousand meters. The spider climbs to a high point, raises its abdomen, and releases multiple silk threads into the air. When the lift from the wind exceeds the spider's weight, it lets go and sails away on its silken parachute. Ballooning spiders have been collected by aircraft at altitudes of over 4,000 meters and have been found on remote oceanic islands hundreds of kilometers from the nearest land. This is how spiders colonize new habitats and how species spread across vast geographical ranges. Remarkably, spiders can detect favorable wind conditions for ballooning and will wait for optimal moments to launch. Some research suggests that spiders may also exploit the Earth's electrical field, using electrostatic forces to help lift them into the air. This ancient dispersal method has allowed spiders to become one of the most widespread groups of animals on the planet. Flamingos travel between salt lakes depending on water levels. The beautiful pink flamingos of Africa and elsewhere undertake nomadic migrations that track the availability of their specialized food sources. Flamingos feed on algae, small crustaceans, and brine shrimp that flourish in saline and alkaline lakes, and the productivity of these lakes varies dramatically with rainfall and evaporation. When one lake becomes too salty, too fresh, or simply dries up, flamingo flocks must relocate to find suitable conditions. Lesser flamingos in East Africa, for example, move between several major soda lakes including Lake Natron, Lake Bogoria, and Lake Nakuru, tracking the blooms of blue-green algae that form the bulk of their diet. These movements can be hundreds of kilometers and often happen with little warning, as entire populations that were present at one lake one morning may have moved on by evening. The birds navigate to lakes they may not have visited for years, implying either excellent spatial memory or sophisticated navigation abilities. Flamingo migrations are difficult to predict, making these spectacularly colorful gatherings all the more special when they occur. The osprey migrates between every continent except Antarctica. The osprey is one of the most widely distributed birds of prey, found on every continent except Antarctica, and undertaking migrations that can span entire hemispheres. These fish-eating raptors breed across much of Europe, Asia, and North America, then migrate to wintering grounds in Africa, South Asia, and South America. A single osprey might see landscapes ranging from Scottish lochs to West African mangroves in the course of a year. Young ospreys making their first migration without their parents must navigate thousands of kilometers using only their inherited instincts. Scientists have tracked ospreys fitted with satellite transmitters and marveled at the directness of their routes, flying over deserts and seas with apparent confidence. The birds face numerous hazards along the way, from storms to electrocution on power lines to hunting by humans. Yet ospreys have proven remarkably resilient, recovering from historical declines caused by pesticides to become once again a common sight at water bodies around the world. Their success is a conservation triumph and a testament to the adaptability of migratory species. Sardines form massive shoals that attract predators from miles around. Each year, along the eastern coast of South Africa, billions of sardines migrate northward in one of the greatest marine spectacles on the planet. The shoals can be several kilometers long and wide, darkening the water and attracting predators from throughout the ocean. Dolphins herd the fish into tight balls that become easy targets for gannets diving from above and sharks attacking from below. Whales lunge through the bait balls with mouths agape, swallowing thousands of fish in a single gulp. The sardine run is triggered by a tongue of cold water that extends up the coast from the Antarctic waters to the south. The fish follow this cold current, and the predators follow the fish. For local fishermen and wildlife watchers, the run is a time of abundance and excitement, though the timing and intensity vary unpredictably from year to year. The run demonstrates how migration can be a shared experience, with the movement of one species triggering movements and gatherings of many others. When the cold water retreats, the sardines disperse, the predators scatter, and the coast returns to relative calm. Mountain gorillas move seasonally to find food at different altitudes. The mountain gorillas of Central Africa undertake altitudinal migrations that take them up and down the slopes of their volcanic home in response to changing food availability. These critically endangered great apes inhabit the forests of the Virunga Mountains and Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, where they feed on the leaves, shoots, and occasional fruits that grow at different elevations throughout the year. During certain seasons, the gorillas climb higher into the mountains to reach particular food plants that fruit at altitude. At other times, they descend to lower slopes where different vegetation provides the nutrition they need. These movements are not as dramatic in distance as the migrations of birds or wildebeest, but for gorillas that spend most of their time on the ground, the steep terrain makes each journey a significant physical effort. The silverback leader determines where and when the group moves, drawing on his experience and memory of the forest. Researchers who have followed gorilla groups for decades have documented how these movement patterns are passed down through generations, creating traditional pathways through the mountain forests. The European stork uses thermal currents to soar across continents. White storks are masters of soaring flight, using rising columns of warm air called thermals to carry them across vast distances with minimal effort. Twice each year, millions of storks migrate between their breeding grounds in Europe and their wintering areas in sub-Saharan Africa. Because thermals form only over land during the heat of the day, storks are reluctant to cross large bodies of water. This constraint funnels the entire European population through two narrow corridors, across Gibraltar in the west and over the Bosporus in the east. At these crossing points, thousands of storks can be seen circling upward in thermals, gaining altitude before gliding across the water to the next thermal on the opposite shore. The birds are so skilled at exploiting rising air that they can cover several hundred kilometers in a day while barely flapping their wings. Young storks learn migration routes by following experienced adults, and this cultural transmission means that different populations take distinctly different paths to reach the same general wintering regions. The return of storks in spring has been celebrated across Europe for centuries, their nests on rooftops and chimneys bringing good luck to the households below. Some fish return to freshwater rivers after years in the ocean. Many fish species spend their adult lives in the ocean, but must return to fresh water to breed, undertaking remarkable migrations between these two very different environments. Salmon are the most famous example, but lampreys, shad and certain eels follow similar patterns. These anadromous fish face enormous physiological challenges as they move between salt and fresh water, their bodies adjusting to maintain the proper balance of salts and fluids. The journey upstream can be brutally demanding, with fish fighting against strong currents, leaping over waterfalls, and navigating past dams and other human-made obstacles. Many do not eat during the upstream migration, relying entirely on stored energy reserves. For salmon, the journey is a one-way trip. They will die after spawning, their nutrients enriching the very streams where the next generation will grow. Other species, like American shad, may survive to make the journey multiple times, returning to the sea to feed before another breeding migration. These connections between marine and freshwater ecosystems are ecologically vital, transporting nutrients and energy between environments that might otherwise be separate. Red knots travel from the Arctic to the southern tip of South America. The red knot is a small shorebird that undertakes one of the longest migrations of any animal, traveling from breeding grounds in the high Arctic to wintering areas at the southern tip of South America. The journey covers approximately 15,000 kilometers each way, and the birds must stop at specific locations along the route to refuel. One critical stopping point is Delaware Bay, on the eastern coast of the United States, where the birds arrive precisely when horseshoe crabs are laying their eggs on the beaches. The knots gorge on the energy-rich eggs, doubling their body weight in just 2 weeks before continuing their journey north. The timing of this stopover has been refined over thousands of years to coincide perfectly with the horseshoe crab spawning season. Recent declines in horseshoe crab populations, due to overharvesting for bait and medical uses, have caused corresponding declines in red knot numbers. Conservation efforts now focus on protecting this crucial link in the chain, recognizing that a bird's survival on the tundra depends on events happening thousands of kilometers away. Whales use the same migration routes for generations. The migration routes followed by whale populations are not randomly chosen, but have been refined over countless generations and passed down from mothers to calves. Humpback whales in particular show strong fidelity to specific routes, with individuals returning to the same feeding and breeding areas year after year. Calves learn the way by accompanying their mothers on the first migration, and they continue to use this route throughout their lives. Different populations of the same species may use completely different routes, a cultural variation that has been maintained for thousands of years. When whale populations were hunted to near extinction, some traditional routes were lost because there were no surviving individuals who remembered them. Populations that have recovered from hunting sometimes take different paths than their ancestors, establishing new routes that may persist for generations to come. These migratory traditions represent a form of cultural knowledge that exists outside the genes, a kind of collective memory held by the population as a whole. The loss of such knowledge may be as significant as the loss of genetic diversity for the long-term health of whale populations. Some beetles migrate in response to changing rainfall patterns. Many beetle species undertake migrations that are timed to coincide with seasonal rains and the flush of plant growth that follows. Dung beetles in African savannas, for example, track the movements of the great herbivore herds, following the wildebeest and zebras that provide the dung they depend upon. When the herds move to new grazing areas, the beetles must follow or perish. In Australia, some scarab beetles emerge in vast numbers after heavy rains, flying in clouds to find mates and fresh vegetation. The rain itself may trigger these emergences, with beetles spending months or even years underground waiting for the right conditions. In desert regions, beetles may remain dormant through years of drought, activating only when rare rainfall creates the conditions they need to reproduce. These migrations are less predictable than those of birds or mammals, but can involve enormous numbers of individuals when they do occur. The movement of beetles has important ecological consequences, as these insects play crucial roles in nutrient cycling, pollination, and soil aeration wherever they travel. The blackpoll warbler loses half its body weight during migration. The blackpoll warbler is a small songbird that undertakes one of the most demanding migrations in the bird world, flying non-stop from the northeastern coast of North America to South America across the open Atlantic Ocean. This journey of over 3,000 kilometers takes approximately 3 days of continuous flight, during which the bird cannot rest, drink, or eat. Before departure, blackpolls feed intensively on insects and berries, nearly doubling their body weight by storing fat. By the time they reach their destination, they have burned through most of these reserves, and may weigh only half what they did at takeoff. The birds wait for favorable weather conditions before launching over the ocean, choosing nights when cold fronts provide tailwinds that will help carry them south. If they miscalculate or encounter storms, there is no place to land, and they will perish in the waves below. This transoceanic route is faster and more direct than following the coastline, but carries enormous risks. The blackpoll's migration demonstrates just how far evolution can push the limits of what small bodies can achieve. Manta rays gather at cleaning stations along their migration routes. Giant manta rays migrate across vast stretches of ocean, but along the way they make regular visits to specific locations where small fish clean parasites from their skin and gills. These cleaning stations are like underwater spas, attracting mantas from hundreds of kilometers around. The rays circle slowly above the reef, allowing cleaner wrasses and other small fish to pick off dead skin, parasites, and food particles from their enormous bodies. Individual mantas can be identified by the unique pattern of spots on their undersides, and researchers have discovered that the same individuals return to the same cleaning stations year after year. The mantas may spend hours at these locations, returning repeatedly over several days before continuing their journey. The cleaning stations serve as social hubs where rays from different areas encounter one another, potentially exchanging information and finding mates. Scientists are using these predictable gatherings to study manta populations and track their movements across international waters. The conservation of cleaning stations has become a priority, as protecting these small reefs can benefit manta populations across entire ocean basins. Zebras follow the wildebeest across the Serengeti. Although the Great Migration is often described in terms of wildebeest, hundreds of thousands of zebras play an equally important role in this massive movement of herbivores. Zebras tend to move slightly ahead of the main wildebeest herds, and this sequencing is not accidental. The zebras prefer longer, coarser grasses that the wildebeest find less palatable. By passing through first and cropping these tall grasses, the zebras make it easier for the wildebeest to access the shorter, more nutritious growth below. This natural division of resources allows both species to coexist without directly competing for the same food. The zebras also contribute to predator detection, their excellent eyesight complementing the wildebeest's sharp hearing and sense of smell. The mixed herds are therefore safer than either species would be alone. Scientists believe this relationship has evolved over millions of years, with each species becoming increasingly integrated into the other's migration pattern. The zebras follow slightly different specific routes in some areas, but the overall pattern of their movement is closely tied to the great circular journey of the Serengeti. Some seabirds can smell land from hundreds of miles away. Procellariform seabirds, which include petrels, shearwaters, and albatrosses, possess an exceptionally developed sense of smell that allows them to navigate across featureless oceans. These birds can detect the scent of land, rich with the smell of vegetation and soil, from extraordinary distances. Some species appear able to smell their home island from over 100 kilometers away, using this olfactory beacon to guide them back to their nesting burrows after months at sea. They can also smell concentrations of fish or plankton on the ocean surface, detecting the chemical signatures of prey from many kilometers distant. This smell-based navigation may complement the magnetic and celestial cues these birds also use. The tube-like nostrils visible on their beaks are specialized structures for enhancing their olfactory abilities. Research has shown that some petrels can recognize the scent of their own mate, their own burrow, and even family members by smell alone. This remarkable sensory world allows them to navigate a realm that appears featureless and unknowable to human senses. The golden eagle migrates through mountain passes. Golden eagles are powerful flyers capable of soaring effortlessly on thermals and updrafts, and many populations migrate southward in autumn to escape harsh winter conditions at higher latitudes. Rather than traveling over the highest peaks, these raptors funnel through mountain passes where the terrain concentrates the air currents they need for efficient flight. Famous watchpoints like the Goshute Mountains in Nevada and the mountains of central Mexico attract birdwatchers who gather to witness thousands of eagles passing through in the span of a few weeks. The birds ride rising air currents along ridge lines, gaining altitude before gliding to the next thermal. Young eagles make their first migration alone, apparently using inherited information about direction and landmarks to find their way. Adult eagles often return to the same wintering territories year after year, demonstrating the remarkable memory and navigation abilities of these birds. The migration of golden eagles connects ecosystems from the Arctic tundra to temperate grasslands, with the eagles preying on different species in their summer and winter ranges. This movement of top predators has significant effects on prey populations throughout the landscapes they cross. Hammerhead sharks gather in enormous schools during migration. Scalloped hammerhead sharks are among the most social of all shark species, gathering in schools that can number in the hundreds during their seasonal migrations. These gatherings occur at seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the ocean floor, and at islands where currents bring rich nutrients. The reasons for this schooling behavior are not entirely understood, but theories include predator avoidance, communications, and finding mates. Females typically occupy the center of the school while males remain at the periphery, and females appear to choose mates based on complex social interactions. At night, the schools disperse as individual sharks head into deeper water to hunt, then reassemble during the day at the same locations. Scientists have tagged hammerheads and tracked their movements across hundreds of kilometers between these gathering sites. The sharks navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, detecting subtle variations that allow them to recognize specific underwater features. These aggregations have made hammerheads vulnerable to fishing, and many populations have declined dramatically. Conservation efforts now focus on protecting the seamounts and islands where the sharks gather, recognizing these sites as crucial waypoints in the hammerhead's migratory life cycle. Caribou give birth during their migration to avoid predators. The timing of caribou calving is intricately linked to their migration, with pregnant females giving birth while the herd is on the move to take advantage of areas where predators are scarce. The calving grounds are often on the open tundra far from tree cover, where approaching wolves can be spotted from a great distance. The synchronized birth of thousands of calves over a few days overwhelms predators, ensuring that while some calves are taken, most survive. Newborn caribou can walk within an hour of birth and run within a day, an essential adaptation for an animal born in transit. The timing is precise, with calves typically arriving just as the snow melts and fresh vegetation becomes available, providing the mothers with the nutrition they need to produce milk. If the migration is delayed or the spring is late, the mismatch between calving and food availability can result in increased mortality. This delicate synchronization has been maintained for thousands of years, but is now threatened by climate change, which is altering the timing of snowmelt and plant growth across the Arctic. Some frogs travel to the same pond where they metamorphosed. Many frog species show remarkable fidelity to their breeding sites, returning year after year to the same ponds where they themselves transformed from tadpoles into adult frogs. This homing behavior involves migrations that may cover several kilometers, a significant distance for an animal only a few centimeters long. The frogs navigate using a combination of sensory cues that scientists are still working to understand. They appear to recognize the chemical signature of their home pond, carried on the wind and in the water, and may also use magnetic fields and celestial cues. The migrations typically occur at night, and often during rain, when the moist air prevents the frogs from drying out during their journey. In some areas, these amphibian migrations have become famous events, with thousands of frogs crossing roads simultaneously on spring nights. Conservation volunteers help frogs cross busy roads during peak migration, carrying them safely in buckets to reduce the carnage that can occur when the routes of frogs and automobiles intersect. The persistence of these migrations, despite the obstacles modern development has placed in their paths, speaks to the powerful instinct that drives these small creatures back to their birthplace. The northern elephant seal dives to great depths while migrating. Northern elephant seals are among the deepest diving mammals on Earth, and they spend most of their time at sea engaged in continuous diving, while migrating across the Pacific Ocean. A typical dive takes the seal to depths of over 500 meters, though they regularly descend to over a kilometer, and have been recorded at nearly 2,000 meters. Each dive lasts approximately 20 minutes, followed by a brief surface interval of just a few minutes before the next descent. The seals dive almost continuously, day and night, for months at a time, as they migrate between their breeding beaches in California and their distant feeding grounds in the North Pacific. During these dives, they hunt deep-water fish and squid that live in the dark, cold waters far below the surface. Scientists have attached data loggers to elephant seals and been astonished to discover that the animals sleep while sinking slowly through the water column, entering a drift dive state that allows them to rest without surfacing. This ability to sleep at depth, combined with their remarkable diving capabilities, allows elephant seals to remain at sea for months, covering enormous distances while barely surfacing. Sandhill cranes have been migrating for millions of years. The sandhill crane is one of the oldest living bird species, with a fossil record stretching back over 2 million years. This means that cranes were migrating across North America when mammoths still roamed the continent, and early humans were just beginning to walk upright in Africa. Today, approximately 500,000 sandhill cranes still follow ancient flyways between their breeding grounds in Canada, Alaska, and Siberia, and wintering areas in the southern United States and Mexico. Each spring, the vast majority of the population gathers along the Platte River in Nebraska, creating one of the greatest wildlife spectacles in North America. The cranes feed in cornfields during the day and roost standing in the shallow river at night, their haunting calls echoing across the prairie. These staging areas have been used for so long that they are part of the landscape itself, shaped by the cranes even as the cranes are shaped by the land. Fossils of ancestral sandhill cranes have been found in these same areas, suggesting that the migratory connection between cranes and the Great Plains is genuinely ancient. Some rays migrate in groups called fevers. When manta rays, eagle rays, or cow-nose rays travel together, the group is known as a fever, an evocative term for these graceful gatherings. Cow-nose rays in the Gulf of Mexico and along the eastern coast of the United States migrate in fevers that can number in the thousands, creating a spectacular sight as they ripple through the water. The rays travel between summer feeding grounds in the northern parts of their range and warmer waters to the south, where they spend the winter. Eagle rays perform similar migrations in tropical waters, gathering in large groups at certain times of year. The benefit of traveling in fevers may include protection from predators, as the many eyes and the confusion of so many identical shapes makes it harder for sharks to single out individual targets. There may also be social benefits, with the gatherings serving as opportunities to find mates and communicate information about food sources. Scientists are still learning about the precise routes and timing of these migrations, using satellite tags and acoustic tracking to follow the movements of these mysterious and beautiful creatures. The pronghorn antelope has the longest land migration in North America. The pronghorn is the fastest land animal in the Western Hemisphere, capable of running at speeds exceeding 80 kilometers per hour, and some populations undertake the longest overland migration of any large mammal in North America. The path of the pronghorn migration in Wyoming takes them from their summer range in Grand Teton National Park to their winter range over 100 kilometers to the south. Along the way, they must navigate a series of bottlenecks, crossing highways, passing through ranches, and squeezing through narrow corridors of habitat between developed areas. In some places, the corridor narrows to just a few hundred meters wide. If these pathways are blocked, the pronghorn cannot complete their migration, and populations will become trapped in areas that cannot support them year-round. Conservationists have worked to identify and protect these crucial corridors, building wildlife overpasses and removing fences that block the pronghorn's path. The migration has been happening for thousands of years, predating the arrival of humans in North America. Protecting this ancient journey requires cooperation between government agencies, private landowners, and conservation organizations. Barnacle geese learn their migration routes from their parents. Unlike many migratory birds that follow inherited genetic programs, barnacle geese learn their migration routes through direct experience with their parents. Young geese make their first journey south in family groups, following their parents and other experienced adults along traditional routes that have been passed down through generations. This cultural transmission means that different populations may use completely different routes to reach similar wintering areas. Scientists made a remarkable discovery when they reintroduced barnacle geese to areas where they had been absent for decades. The new populations had to create their own routes, and some chose paths quite different from those used by traditional populations. The geese remembered these new routes and passed them on to their offspring, creating entirely new migratory traditions in just a few generations. This flexibility may help the species adapt to changing conditions, but it also means that traditional routes can be lost if the birds that know them die out. Conservation efforts increasingly recognize the importance of protecting not just the birds themselves, but the cultural knowledge they carry about the pathways connecting their seasonal homes. Some squid migrate vertically hundreds of meters each day. Many squid species participate in the daily vertical migration that makes the ocean's twilight zone one of the most dynamic habitats on Earth. At dusk, countless squid rise from the depths toward the surface, following the zooplankton they feed upon. By dawn, they descend again into the darkness below, escaping predators that hunt by sight in the sunlit waters. The Humboldt squid, a large and aggressive species found in the eastern Pacific, may travel over a kilometer vertically each day, an extraordinary distance for an invertebrate. These squid are capable of dramatic color changes, flashing red and white patterns that may communicate with other squid in the dim light. During their vertical migrations, they encounter very different conditions, from the cold, high-pressure darkness of the deep to the warmer, brighter waters near the surface. Their physiology allows them to adapt rapidly to these changing conditions. Some squid species also undertake horizontal migrations, following currents and prey across hundreds of kilometers of ocean. The combined movements of all the ocean squid represent a significant transfer of biomass and nutrients between different layers of the sea. The lesser long-nosed bat follows blooming cacti across deserts. The migration of the lesser long-nosed bat is timed perfectly with the flowering of cacti and agaves across the deserts of Mexico and the southwestern United States. These bats are important pollinators, feeding on the nectar of night-blooming cactus flowers and transferring pollen from plant to plant as they go. The bats follow a wave of blooming that moves northward with the warming spring, and their arrival at each location coincides precisely with the opening of the flowers they need. This relationship is so close that some cactus species depend almost entirely on these bats for pollination, and the bats depend on the cacti for food. The round trip can cover over 2,000 kilometers, with pregnant females making the journey north to give birth in maternity roosts in Arizona and other locations. After raising their young, the bats head south again, following the later flowering plants of the autumn. Conservation of these bats requires protecting not only their roost sites, but also the corridors of flowering plants that feed them along the way. Urban development and climate change threaten to disrupt this delicate synchrony that has evolved over millions of years. Whooping cranes were saved from extinction through migration studies. The whooping crane once faced extinction, with fewer than 20 individuals remaining in the wild in the middle of the 20th century. Intensive conservation efforts have brought the population back to several hundred birds, and central to this recovery has been understanding and protecting their migration routes. The original wild population migrates between breeding grounds in Canada's Wood Buffalo National Park and wintering areas in coastal Texas, a journey of approximately 4,000 kilometers. Conservationists discovered these crucial sites by tracking the birds and then worked to protect them. In a remarkable effort to establish a second migratory population, young cranes were taught to follow ultralight aircraft from Wisconsin to Florida, creating a new migration route that had not existed for over a century. These human-taught crane migrations demonstrated that cranes can learn new routes, giving hope that the species can be saved, even if traditional routes are lost. Today, the whooping crane remains endangered, but its population continues to grow, a testament to what can be achieved when science and conservation work together to protect migratory species. Sea turtles can navigate using the Earth's magnetic signature. Sea turtles are capable of detecting the Earth's magnetic field and using it to navigate across featureless oceans to find their way home. Research has shown that hatchling turtles emerging from their nests already possess a magnetic map that tells them which direction to swim. As they grow and travel across the ocean, they learn to recognize magnetic signatures associated with different locations, building a detailed map that they carry for life. The magnetic field varies in both intensity and angle across the Earth's surface, and turtles appear sensitive to both parameters. This allows them to determine their position with remarkable precision, potentially recognizing the unique magnetic fingerprint of their natal beach from far out at sea. The ability to navigate magnetically is especially important over the open ocean, where there are no landmarks, and celestial navigation can be difficult during cloudy weather. Scientists have tested turtle navigation by exposing them to artificially altered magnetic fields and observing how their behavior changes. This magnetic sense, combined with other cues including ocean currents, chemical signatures, and possibly even the position of the stars and waves, allows turtles to accomplish some of the most impressive navigational feats in the animal kingdom. Some butterflies migrate only during specific weather conditions. Butterfly migrations are often triggered and shaped by specific weather conditions, with the insects waiting for optimal winds, temperatures, and humidity before taking flight. Painted lady butterflies, for example, ride high-altitude winds during their migrations, choosing days when the air currents are moving in the direction they need to travel. Monarch butterflies time their departure from northern areas to coincide with cold fronts that bring tailwinds and cooler temperatures that favor sustained flight. If weather conditions are unfavorable, butterflies may delay their departure by days or even weeks, feeding and building energy reserves until conditions improve. Once airborne, butterflies adjust their flight altitude to take advantage of the most favorable winds, sometimes flying at heights of over 1,000 meters, where they catch fast-moving air currents. Radar studies have revealed that migrating butterflies can form dense streams through the atmosphere, millions of individuals all taking advantage of the same weather system. This dependence on weather makes butterfly migrations highly variable from year to year, with the same species following different routes and timing in different seasons depending on the atmospheric conditions they encounter. The short-tailed shearwater travels in a figure eight across the Pacific. Each year, the short-tailed shearwater traces an enormous figure eight pattern across the Pacific Ocean, following the winds and the abundance of food in an endless circuit of the world's largest ocean. These birds breed on islands off southern Australia during the southern hemisphere summer, then head north as autumn approaches. They follow the western edge of the Pacific up past Japan and then cross to Alaska, arriving in the northern hemisphere just in time for summer. As autumn returns, they head south along the western coast of the Americas, before crossing back to Australia. This route covers approximately 30,000 kilometers and takes full advantage of the prevailing winds at each stage of the journey. The shearwaters time their movements to coincide with blooms of krill and schools of small fish, fueling each leg of the migration. The entire pattern is completed in a single year, with the birds spending only a few months on land to breed before launching into the next circuit. The precision of this migration, refined over countless generations, demonstrates the remarkable ability of seabirds to exploit the resources of an entire ocean basin. Moose move between summer and winter ranges in mountainous regions. In mountainous areas across North America, Europe, and Asia, moose undertake altitudinal migrations that take them from high summer meadows to lower valleys where they spend the winter. During the warm months, moose climb into the mountains to feed on willows, aquatic plants, and the lush vegetation that grows at altitude. The cooler temperatures at elevation provide relief from biting insects and offer abundant food. As snow deepens in autumn, the moose move downhill, following river valleys to areas where the snow is less deep and browse remains accessible. The timing and distance of these migrations varies depending on local conditions, with some moose populations remaining relatively sedentary, while others travel dozens of kilometers between seasonal ranges. Mother moose lead their calves on these journeys, teaching them the routes they will use for the rest of their lives. In some areas, traditional moose migration corridors have been disrupted by roads, fences, and development, forcing the animals to find new paths or remain in suboptimal habitats year-round. The moose's movements help distribute nutrients across the landscape, connecting the ecosystems of mountains and valleys. Some crabs climb trees to release larvae into the ocean. The coconut crab, the largest land-dwelling arthropod in the world, undertakes a remarkable journey during its breeding season, traveling to the coast and climbing trees to release its larvae into the sea. These massive crabs, which can weigh over 4 kilograms, spend most of their lives inland, sometimes several kilometers from the ocean. When the time comes to breed, females carry their fertilized eggs on their abdomen as they make their way to the shore. Rather than simply entering the water, the crabs often climb rocks or trees at the water's edge, releasing their larvae into the sea from above as waves crash beneath them. This behavior may help ensure the larvae are swept out to sea rather than being washed back onto shore. After spending their early lives in the ocean, young coconut crabs return to land and begin the slow crawl inland, reversing the migration their parents made. The robber crab, as it is also known, is famous for its ability to crack coconuts with its powerful claws, a skill that made it an important food source for Pacific Islanders. The peregrine falcon migrates while hunting other migrating birds. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal on Earth, reaching speeds over 300 kilometers per hour during its hunting dives. Many peregrine populations migrate seasonally, and during these journeys they hunt other migratory birds, making them predators that follow prey across entire continents. Peregrines that breed in the Arctic tundra, where there is no shortage of nesting birds during the brief summer, must move south as winter approaches and their prey disappears. Along the way, they intercept flocks of songbirds, shorebirds, and waterfowl that are making their own migrations. The falcons often concentrate at specific locations where migrating birds are funneled together, such as coastlines, mountain ridges, and narrow land bridges. At these bottlenecks, birders and falcon enthusiasts gather to watch both predator and prey pass through. The peregrine's own migration is less predictable than that of its prey, with individual falcons choosing their routes based on where hunting is most successful. Some peregrine populations are resident year-round, while others undertake journeys of thousands of kilometers. The falcon's adaptability has helped it recover from near extinction, caused by pesticides in the 20th century. Sperm whales travel to specific areas to feed on giant squid. Sperm whales are among the deepest diving mammals, capable of descending over 2,000 meters in search of the giant squid that form a significant part of their diet. These massive whales migrate between different regions of the ocean, traveling to areas where squid are most abundant at different times of year. Female sperm whales and their young typically remain in warmer tropical and subtropical waters, while adult males range into colder polar seas where different species of squid abound. The males undertake long migrations to return to the breeding grounds where they compete for access to females. Sperm whales have been tracked traveling thousands of kilometers between feeding and breeding areas. Their dives into the deep ocean take them to a world that remains largely unknown to science, hunting prey by echolocation in perpetual darkness. The squid fight back, and many sperm whales carry scars from the suckers and hooks of their struggling prey. These battles in the deep are among the most dramatic and least observed encounters in the natural world, taking place in waters so deep that no light penetrates. Some grasshoppers swarm and migrate when population density rises. Grasshoppers and locusts are closely related, and in fact, many locusts are simply grasshoppers that have transformed in response to crowding. When grasshopper populations increase beyond a critical density, physical contact between individuals triggers a cascade of hormonal and behavioral changes. The solitary sedentary grasshoppers become gregarious locusts with different colors, body shapes, and an irresistible urge to move. The transformation can happen within a single generation, turning what was a harmless insect into a swarming plague capable of devastating crops across entire regions. The swarms that form can contain billions of individuals, eating everything in their path as they migrate across the landscape. Scientists have identified specific neurons in the grasshopper brain that trigger this transformation when stimulated by crowding. Understanding this process has become crucial for predicting and preventing locust outbreaks. Climate conditions that favor rapid grasshopper reproduction, such as unusual rainfall that produces abundant vegetation, can set the stage for population explosions and subsequent swarming. When swarms finally disperse and populations fall, the surviving grasshoppers revert to their solitary form, waiting for conditions that might trigger the cycle again. The rufous hummingbird travels nearly 7,000 kilometers. Despite being one of the smallest birds in North America, the rufous hummingbird undertakes one of the longest migrations of any hummingbird species. These tiny birds, weighing about 3 grams, travel from wintering grounds in Mexico to breeding areas as far north as Alaska, a journey of up to 7,000 kilometers round trip. The northward migration follows the Pacific coast and the blooming of flowers that provide the nectar these birds require. The southward journey takes a different route through the Rocky Mountains, where late summer wildflowers offer abundant food. Rufous hummingbirds are known for their aggressive defense of flower patches, chasing away birds many times their size. During migration, they must find food constantly, as their high metabolism requires feeding every 10 to 15 minutes when active. Before crossing barriers like the Gulf of Mexico or high mountain passes, they build up fat reserves that can nearly double their body weight. The birds navigate using the sun and possibly the Earth's magnetic field, finding their way back to the same breeding and wintering sites year after year. Their incredible journey across diverse landscapes and challenging terrain makes the rufous hummingbird one of the most impressive migrants for its size. Horseshoe crabs gather on beaches in millions to spawn. Each spring, horseshoe crabs emerge from the ocean to gather on beaches along the Atlantic coast of North America in one of the oldest migration events still occurring on Earth. These ancient arthropods, which are more closely related to spiders than to true crabs, have been following this pattern for hundreds of millions of years. During the highest tides of May and June, particularly around the full and new moons, horseshoe crabs congregate on sandy beaches by the hundreds of thousands to lay their eggs. Males arrive first and wait in the shallow water for females, which are typically larger. A female may be surrounded by multiple males as she crawls up the beach to dig a nest and deposit her eggs. The eggs are crucial food for migrating shorebirds, particularly the red knot, which times its own migration to coincide with this bounty. The relationship between horseshoe crabs and shorebirds demonstrates how migrations of different species can become intertwined over evolutionary time. Conservation efforts now focus on protecting horseshoe crab spawning beaches, recognizing their importance for both the crabs themselves and the birds that depend upon them. Seabirds follow fishing boats along their migration routes. Many seabirds have learned to associate fishing boats with easy meals, following vessels that discard unwanted catch or process fish at sea. This behavior has become so established that some seabird populations now time their migrations to take advantage of fishing activity in different regions. Albatrosses, petrels, and gulls are particularly adept at exploiting this food source, traveling hundreds of kilometers to follow productive fishing grounds. The relationship is not always benign, however, as seabirds are frequently killed by fishing gear, particularly longlines and trawl nets. This has created a conservation crisis for many species, with some albatross populations declining dramatically due to fisheries bycatch. At the same time, the food provided by fisheries may have allowed some seabird populations to remain larger than they would be otherwise. scientists are working with fishermen to develop methods that reduce seabird bycatch, while still allowing birds to benefit from discards. The interaction between seabirds and fishing boats illustrates how human activities have become woven into the fabric of wildlife migration, creating both opportunities and dangers for the animals that have learned to follow our ships. Some snakes gather in dens by the thousands before winter. In the northern parts of their range, many snake species undertake seasonal migrations between their summer feeding grounds and communal dens where they hibernate through the winter. Red-sided garter snakes in Manitoba, Canada, gather at specific limestone sinkholes by the tens of thousands, creating one of the greatest wildlife spectacles involving reptiles anywhere on Earth. As autumn temperatures drop, snakes from across the surrounding area converge on these dens, which have been used for thousands of years. The snakes descend below the frost line, where they remain dormant through the long, cold winter. When spring arrives, they emerge en masse, and the area around the den becomes a writhing carpet of snakes engaged in mating behavior. Males compete for access to females in tangled balls of intertwined bodies. After mating, the snakes disperse across the landscape to feed and grow during the summer months. The location of suitable hibernation dens is learned from other snakes, with young individuals following the scent trails left by adults on their way to the den. The white stork can travel over 10,000 kilometers to Africa. White storks are among the most beloved migratory birds in Europe, their return in spring celebrated for centuries as a sign of warmer weather to come. These large, elegant birds nest on rooftops and in trees across Central and Eastern Europe, then migrate to sub-Saharan Africa for the winter. The journey can cover over 10,000 kilometers each way, with the birds crossing the Mediterranean Sea at its narrowest points, either at Gibraltar in the west or the Bosporus in the east. Storks are soaring birds that depend on thermals to gain altitude, which means they avoid crossing large bodies of water where thermals do not form. This funnels the entire European population through just 2 narrow corridors, creating spectacular concentrations of migrating birds at these crossing points. Scientists have attached satellite transmitters to storks and tracked their individual journeys across continents, discovering that some birds take detours to visit garbage dumps or other locations where easy food is available. The stork's migration has been affected by climate change, with some populations now wintering in Spain, or even remaining in Europe year-round as conditions warm. Beluga whales migrate in large pods to summer feeding grounds. Beluga whales are among the most social of all cetaceans, living in tight-knit family groups and migrating together in pods that can number in the hundreds or even thousands. These distinctive white whales spend their winters in Arctic seas, often navigating through breaks in the ice to breathe. As summer approaches, they migrate south to specific estuaries and river mouths, where they gather in enormous congregations. These summer gathering sites, such as those in Hudson Bay and the St. Lawrence River, have been used for thousands of years and hold cultural significance for the local whale populations. The belugas appear to use these gatherings for socializing, mating, and raising their young in the warmer, shallow waters. Their flexible necks, unusual among whales, allow them to make a wider range of vocalizations, earning them the nickname sea canaries. Young belugas learn migration routes by following their mothers, and may continue to return to the same summer gathering sites throughout their lives. The predictability of these aggregations has made belugas vulnerable to hunting, though many populations are now protected. Some bees migrate short distances to follow flowering plants. While bees are not typically thought of as migratory animals, some species do undertake seasonal movements to track the blooming of flowers across landscapes. Bumblebee colonies are annual, with only the queen surviving winter, but individual queens may travel considerable distances to find suitable nesting sites in spring. In mountainous regions, some bee populations shift their range up and down slopes, as flowers bloom at progressively higher elevations through the season. Carpenter bees and some sweat bees may move between different habitats, as the availability of their preferred flowers changes. Perhaps the most impressive bee migration involves African honeybees, which can move entire colonies over considerable distances to follow unpredictable rainfall and the flowering it triggers. These absconding colonies simply abandon their old nest and fly to a new location, something European honeybees rarely do. The relationship between bees and flowering plants is so intimate that any disruption to the timing of blooms can have serious consequences for bee populations. Climate change is already altering when and where flowers appear, potentially creating mismatches between bees and the plants they depend upon. The Great Migration in Africa is visible from space. The movement of over 2 million animals across the Serengeti Mara ecosystem is so vast that it creates visible changes in the Earth's surface that can be detected from orbiting satellites. The combined grazing of more than 1 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, transforms the color and texture of the grasslands as the herds pass through. Scientists have used satellite imagery to track the progress of the migration, watching as areas of tall grass become cropped short and green vegetation turns to golden stubble. The dust raised by millions of hooves creates visible plumes that drift across the plains. At river crossings, the concentration of so many animals creates disturbances that affect the flow of water and the shape of riverbanks. The nutrients deposited by the herds in the form of dung and urine visibly changes the growth patterns of vegetation in the weeks following their passage. This ability to observe the migration from space has revolutionized our understanding of how it works, allowing researchers to see patterns that would be invisible from the ground. Birds time their migration to match insect hatches along the way. The success of many bird migrations depends on arriving at the right place at precisely the right time to take advantage of seasonal abundance of insects. Warblers, flycatchers, and other insectivorous birds must coordinate their journey to coincide with the hatching of caterpillars and the emergence of flying insects along their route. A bird arriving too early will find no food. Arriving too late will find the insects already gone. This timing has been refined over thousands of generations, with birds responding to environmental cues such as day length and temperature to trigger their departure. Climate change is now disrupting these ancient synchronies, as warming temperatures cause insects to emerge earlier, while the birds' departure cues remain unchanged. Some populations are adapting, shifting their timing to match the new conditions, while others are declining because they can no longer find food when and where they expect it. Research has shown that birds are incredibly precise in their timing, with some individuals arriving at the same stopover sites within a day or two of the same date each year. This precision reflects the crucial importance of timing in a world where windows of opportunity may only last a few days. Some amphibians use rain as a signal to begin migration. For many frogs, toads, and salamanders, the arrival of warm spring rain triggers their annual migration to breeding ponds. The rain provides the moisture these thin-skinned creatures need to survive the journey, as amphibians can rapidly lose water through their permeable skin in dry conditions. The first warm, rainy nights of spring bring explosive breeding migrations, with thousands of amphibians emerging from their winter hiding places and hopping or crawling toward ancestral waters. Roads can become treacherous for both amphibians and drivers on these nights, as the creatures cross in such numbers that the pavement becomes slick with casualties. Conservation groups organize bucket brigades on known crossing nights, ferrying amphibians safely across roads that bisect their traditional routes. The reliance on rain makes these migrations highly unpredictable, occurring whenever conditions align rather than on a fixed calendar date. Scientists monitor weather forecasts and use their knowledge of local conditions to predict when big nights will occur. The connection between rain and amphibian movement is so strong that some species will not breed at all in years when spring rains fail to materialize. The basking shark migrates to follow plankton blooms. The basking shark is the second largest fish in the ocean, reaching lengths of over 12 meters, yet it feeds on some of the smallest organisms in the sea. These gentle giants migrate across vast distances to track the seasonal blooms of plankton that provide their food. Basking sharks are filter feeders, swimming slowly through the water with their enormous mouths agape, straining plankton from thousands of liters of seawater every hour. In summer, they congregate at the surface in temperate waters where plankton is abundant, giving them their name for their habit of basking in the sun. Scientists long wondered where basking sharks went in winter, as they disappeared from their known summer haunts. Satellite tracking has revealed that they migrate to deeper, warmer waters, and may travel thousands of kilometers to reach productive areas far from their usual range. Some basking sharks cross the entire Atlantic Ocean, following the shifting patterns of plankton productivity. The sharks may dive to great depths during winter, remaining at levels where plankton concentrates. This lifestyle connects ecosystems across huge areas in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Elk migrate between high mountain meadows and lower valleys. Throughout the mountain ranges of western North America, elk undertake seasonal migrations that take them from low winter ranges to high summer pastures. The timing of these movements is closely tied to the greening of vegetation, with elk following the nutritious new growth that emerges as snow melts at progressively higher elevations. Scientists call this behavior surfing the green wave, as elk move uphill at roughly the same pace as spring advances. In autumn, the process reverses, with elk descending ahead of the deepening snow to reach valleys where they can find food through the winter. Some elk populations travel only a few kilometers between seasonal ranges, while others migrate over 100 kilometers through mountainous terrain. These journeys pass through a patchwork of public lands, private ranches, and developed areas, creating challenges for conservation. Traditional migration routes have been used for thousands of years, with the paths worn into the landscape by generations of hooves. Where human development has blocked these routes, elk populations have declined or become confined to areas that cannot support them year-round. Protecting migration corridors has become a priority for wildlife managers across the western United States. Some caterpillars migrate before transforming into butterflies. While adult butterflies are famous migrants, some caterpillars also undertake remarkable journeys before they undergo metamorphosis. The armyworm caterpillar is named for its habit of marching in large numbers across fields, moving from one area to another in search of food. When these caterpillars exhaust the vegetation in one area, they form dense bands that can be meters wide and march together to find fresh plants. The movement is not true migration in the sense of a seasonal round trip, but it represents coordinated long-distance movement in response to resource availability. Processionary caterpillars, which move in long nose-to-tail lines, travel considerable distances between their feeding trees and their pupation sites. Some caterpillars descend from mountain tops to lower elevations to find suitable conditions for transforming into chrysalises. The monarch caterpillar, while not a migrant itself, contributes to one of the world's great migrations, by being raised on milkweed plants that its grandparents found during their northward journey. The caterpillar stage thus plays a crucial role in the multi-generational migration, even though it is the adult butterflies that make the famous journey south. The European eel begins its life in the Sargasso Sea. The life cycle of the European eel is one of the most remarkable and mysterious in the animal kingdom. Every European eel alive today began its existence as a tiny transparent larva in the Sargasso Sea, a region of the Atlantic Ocean east of the Caribbean. These larvae, called leptocephali, drift on ocean currents for up to 3 years before reaching the coasts of Europe and North Africa. As they approach land, they transform into glass eels, transparent and only a few centimeters long, then gradually darken as they enter rivers and begin their freshwater lives. The eels may spend decades in rivers and lakes, growing slowly until something triggers their transformation into silver eels, the reproductive form. Their eyes enlarge, their skin becomes silvery, and their digestive systems shut down as they begin the long journey back to the Sargasso Sea. No human has ever observed European eels mating in the wild, and the exact location where they spawn remains uncertain. After presumably spawning, the adults die, and the cycle begins again with tiny larvae drifting on the currents, destined for distant shores. Swifts sleep on the wing during their long migrations. The common swift spends more time in continuous flight than any other bird, even sleeping while airborne during its long migrations between Europe and Africa. Scientists have attached data loggers to swifts and confirmed that the birds remain in the air for months at a time, never landing from the moment they leave their nesting sites until they return the following year. Sleep, which seems to require lying still, presents an obvious challenge for a bird that never stops flying. Swifts appear to solve this problem by entering brief periods of unihemispheric sleep, in which one half of the brain rests, while the other remains active. They may also ascend to high altitudes at dusk, and drift on air currents through the night, barely flapping while they rest. The birds can eat, drink and even mate on the wing, catching insects and collecting airborne water droplets without landing. This extreme aerial lifestyle is made possible by wings shaped for efficient gliding and tiny feet that are useful only for clinging to vertical surfaces during the brief nesting season. The swift's migration is therefore not a journey from one resting place to another, but an endless flight interrupted only by the needs of reproduction. Climate change is altering ancient migration patterns. Migration routes and timings that have remained stable for thousands of years are now shifting as the Earth's climate changes. Birds are arriving at their breeding grounds earlier in spring, driven by warming temperatures that trigger their departure cues ahead of the traditional schedule. Some species are no longer migrating at all, remaining in areas that were once too cold for winter survival. The timing mismatches between migrants and their food sources are becoming more common, with birds arriving to find that insects have already hatched or plants have already bloomed. Range shifts are causing species to encounter new competitors, predators and diseases along their routes. In the Arctic, melting sea ice is forcing polar bears to swim longer distances, while caribou face changing snow conditions that affect their traditional paths. Whales are exploring new waters as the warming ocean alters the distribution of their prey. These changes are happening faster than many species can adapt through normal evolutionary processes. Scientists are racing to understand how migrations are changing and what conservation actions might help species cope with a rapidly warming world. Some species now migrate earlier or later than their ancestors. Long-term records of bird arrivals, collected by amateur naturalists for over a century, reveal that many species are now reaching their breeding grounds earlier than they did in the past. In Europe, where such records are particularly detailed, some birds are arriving weeks earlier than they did just decades ago. This shift appears to be a response to warming spring temperatures, but it creates challenges when the timing of other aspects of the ecosystem has not changed at the same rate. Pied flycatchers in the Netherlands, for example, have advanced their arrival but not as quickly as the caterpillars they depend upon, which now peak before the birds' eggs hatch. Some species are shifting in the opposite direction, with warmer autumns allowing them to delay their departure and remain on the breeding grounds longer. The consequences of these timing shifts ripple through ecosystems in complex ways. Predators that depend on migrating prey may find their food supply arriving at unexpected times. Plants that rely on migrating pollinators may bloom before their visitors arrive. Understanding and predicting these shifts has become a major focus of ecological research. Light pollution can disorient migrating birds at night. Millions of birds migrate at night, navigating by the stars and the Earth's magnetic field through skies that were once uniformly dark. The spread of artificial lighting has transformed the night, and many migrating birds are drawn to illuminated buildings, towers, and cities, often with fatal results. Birds become trapped in beams of light, circling until they collapse from exhaustion or collide with structures. The problem is particularly severe during foggy or overcast conditions, when lights create a glowing dome that attracts and confuses migrants. It is estimated that billions of birds die each year in collisions with buildings and structures in North America alone. Conservation efforts now focus on reducing light pollution during peak migration periods, with campaigns encouraging building managers to turn off unnecessary lights. Bird-friendly building designs incorporate features that reduce reflections and collisions. Some cities have adopted lights-out programs during spring and autumn migration, dimming skyscrapers to give birds safe passage. Research continues into how different wavelengths of light affect bird navigation, with hopes that findings will lead to lighting solutions that serve human needs while allowing birds to migrate safely through the night. Corridors of protected land help maintain migration routes. As human development fragments natural habitats, wildlife corridors have become essential for maintaining the connectivity that migratory species require. These corridors are strips of protected land that link larger habitat areas, allowing animals to move between seasonal ranges, breeding grounds, and refuges. For large mammals like elk, pronghorn, and elephants, corridors may need to span hundreds of kilometers and cross multiple jurisdictions. The creation and maintenance of these corridors requires cooperation between governments, private landowners, and conservation organizations. In some cases, wildlife overpasses or underpasses have been built to allow animals to safely cross highways that bisect their traditional routes. Fences have been modified or removed to allow passage while still serving their original purposes. The identification of critical corridors often relies on decades of research, tracking individual animals to discover the paths they use. Once identified, corridors must be protected from development that would block them. The value of corridors extends beyond migration, helping to maintain genetic connectivity between populations that might otherwise become isolated. In an increasingly fragmented world, these narrow pathways may be all that connects the wild places that remain. Scientists track migration using satellite tags and radar. Modern technology has revolutionized our understanding of animal migration, allowing scientists to follow individual creatures across continents and oceans. Satellite transmitters attached to birds, whales, sharks, and turtles send signals to orbiting satellites, which relay the animals' positions to researchers anywhere in the world. These devices have become small enough to attach to birds weighing only a few grams, revealing migration routes that were previously unknown. GPS loggers record locations with remarkable precision, showing not just where animals go, but how fast they travel and how high they fly. Geolocators use light levels to estimate position, allowing researchers to track small birds that cannot carry heavier transmitters. Radar networks originally designed to track weather and aircraft have been repurposed to monitor bird migration, revealing the scale and timing of nocturnal movements. Acoustic monitoring stations record whale songs and bat calls, mapping the movements of animals that are difficult to observe directly. Stable isotope analysis allows scientists to determine where an animal has been by examining the chemical signatures in its feathers or tissues. Together, these technologies have transformed migration from a mysterious phenomenon observed only at its endpoints to a process we can follow in remarkable detail. Some migrations have been studied for over a century. The systematic study of bird migration began in the late 19th century, when researchers started banding birds with small numbered rings and recording where they were later found. This simple technique, still used today, has produced over a century of data on the routes, timing, and survival of migratory species. The earliest banding schemes revealed that birds travel much further than anyone had imagined, with small songbirds crossing entire continents and oceans. Long-term studies have documented how migration patterns have changed over decades, providing crucial baseline data for understanding the effects of climate change. Some individual birds have been tracked for their entire adult lives, returning to the same sites year after year for decades. Research stations at migration bottlenecks have operated continuously for generations, with scientists and volunteers counting passing birds each day during the migration season. The accumulated records represent an irreplaceable archive of how the natural world has changed over more than 100 years. This long-term perspective is essential for distinguishing genuine trends from the normal year-to-year variation that characterizes any biological system. The mystery of how animals navigate is still being unraveled. Despite decades of research, scientists are still discovering new aspects of how migratory animals find their way across vast distances. The magnetic sense that allows birds to detect the Earth's field has been confirmed, but the exact mechanism remains debated. Some researchers believe magnetite crystals in the beak act as compass needles, while others propose that a protein in the eye called cryptochrome allows birds to literally see the magnetic field. How animals create and use mental maps that allow them to recognize specific locations remains poorly understood. Recent research suggests that birds may remember magnetic signatures associated with particular places, creating a kind of magnetic map. The role of smell in navigation, once dismissed as unimportant for birds, is now recognized as significant for some species. Turtles appear to imprint on the unique magnetic signature of their natal beach, but how they then recognize this signature when returning years later is unclear. Each discovery seems to reveal new mysteries. The navigation abilities of even simple creatures like butterflies suggest that much remains to be learned about the biological basis of orientation and map sense in the animal kingdom. Migration connects ecosystems across the entire planet. Migratory animals serve as living links between ecosystems that might otherwise be completely separate, transporting nutrients, seeds, parasites, and diseases across continents and oceans. Salmon swimming upstream from the Pacific Ocean carry oceanic nutrients deep into the forests of the Pacific Northwest, where their bodies feed bears, eagles, and eventually fertilize the very trees that shade the streams. Arctic nesting shorebirds connecting the tundra to tropical mudflats carry parasites and pathogens between ecosystems on opposite sides of the Earth. The droppings of migratory birds fertilize islands and coral reefs thousands of kilometers from their breeding grounds. Whales diving from the surface to the ocean depths bring nutrients up in their waste, stimulating the growth of plankton that feeds entire marine food webs. These connections mean that changes in one ecosystem can have effects far away, transmitted by the animals that travel between them. The health of a shorebird population in Alaska may depend on the conservation of beaches in Australia. The productivity of an African savanna may be linked to wetlands in Europe. Migration makes the biosphere a single interconnected system. Every migration is a testament to the resilience of life. The fact that migrations continue, despite the countless obstacles and dangers animals face, is a powerful demonstration of life's resilience. Birds fly through storms, over oceans and across deserts. Wildebeest swim through crocodile-infested rivers. Butterflies navigate thousands of kilometers despite having brains smaller than a grain of rice. Each successful journey represents a victory over predators, parasites, starvation, and exhaustion. The instinct to migrate has been refined by millions of years of evolution, with only the strongest and most capable animals surviving to pass on their genes. When populations decline, it is often the stress of migration that proves to be the breaking point. Yet many species have proven remarkably adaptable, shifting their routes and timing in response to changing conditions. Migrations that were thought to have been lost forever have sometimes been restored when conditions improved, or when human intervention gave populations a second chance. The persistence of migration, even in a world increasingly dominated by human activity, gives hope that these ancient patterns can continue into the future. Every bird that completes its journey, every whale that returns to its breeding ground, represents a triumph of instinct and endurance. The travelers of the wild remind us that movement is life. From the smallest insect to the largest whale, migratory animals demonstrate that movement is fundamental to life on Earth. The urge to travel is written into the genes of countless species, an ancient imperative that predates the existence of humans by hundreds of millions of years. These journeys connect distant places, carry nutrients across ecosystems, and ensure that populations remain healthy through genetic mixing. Migration allows animals to exploit resources that no sedentary creature could access, following the seasons to find food and shelter where they are most abundant. Humans are migrants too, our ancestors having walked out of Africa to colonize every continent on Earth. Something in us responds to the sight of geese flying overhead, or whales breaching in distant waters, a recognition perhaps that we share this ancient urge to move. In an increasingly connected world, migratory animals remind us that borders are human constructions, invisible to the birds and butterflies that cross them freely. The protection of migratory species requires international cooperation, recognizing that creatures belong not to any single nation but to the global community. The travelers teach us that the world is one, and that all life is connected in a web of movement and exchange. And now the quiet wonders of migration begin to gently fade into the stillness of the night. You have wandered through over 100 peaceful truths about the great journeys of the natural world. From the Arctic tern that chases endless summer, to the salmon that swims against the current to return home. From the wildebeest that thunder across the savanna, to the butterfly that floats on autumn winds. From the whale that sings across ocean basins, to the bird that navigates by the stars. You have explored how creatures sense magnetic fields, how they read the sun and the stars, how they follow invisible pathways written into their very being. You have learned that migration is not simply travel. It is a rhythm as old as life itself, connecting every corner of the earth in a dance of seasons, instinct, and survival. You are connected to this story more deeply than you may realize. Right now, as you listen, somewhere in the world a flock is taking flight. A herd is crossing a river. A whale is rising to breathe in a distant sea. These journeys do not need your attention. They simply continue, faithfully and endlessly, as they have since long before humans walked the earth. If your eyes feel heavy now, let them close. Let the rhythm of your breath become steady, like the wing beats of a bird crossing an ocean, like the quiet pulse of a heart that knows exactly where it needs to go. Tonight, as you rest, the travelers of the world continue their quiet journeys. They will cross mountains. They will navigate by starlight. They will follow ancient pathways that no map has ever charted. And when the seasons turn again, they will return. You are a small, warm presence within this vast migrating world, peacefully resting among the wonders. Sleep well, sweet dreams, and may you carry with you the quiet knowledge that you are never truly alone. For all around you, seen and unseen, the great journeys of life continue, patient and eternal, carrying the wisdom of 1,000,000 generations. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the mysteries of migration. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Drowsy Discovery for more soothing explorations of how our natural world works. There are more wonders waiting. More secrets hidden in the flight paths of birds and the ocean trails of whales. More gentle truths to drift through on quiet evenings. Rest well. And may the quiet rhythm of the travelers keep you company through the night. This has been Drowsy Discovery. Good night.